Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, I've got with me a very good, long-standing industry friend, colleague, peer of mine, and teammate, Tim Connold. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for coming along. So we're talking about product management and how you use that to drive value, particularly in data, but we'll wander around the topic a little bit. But before we get into that too much, why don't we introduce you to the wonderful audience and give a bit about you and your background? Great.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Well, not see you. My name's Tim. I've been in and around data for the best part of 20 years now. I've worked on both sides of the fence. I've worked as a customer, working embedded within organisations. I've also worked on the client side as well, servicing organisations. My passion has always been about digital and data and using digital and data through digital journeys to really transform and help the customer. I've done that at a number of different places. On the sort of supplier side, I've done that at IBM, Accenture, and on the customer side, I've done that and really sort of taken the sort of use case product approach at sort of Royal Mail. I've done O2, Marks and Spencers, and ASOS. So real sort of focus on the end customers, my sort of passion, and using that through digital journeys and data.
Amazing. And obviously we've worked together. I was thinking about it this morning actually since 2013, and
I don't know that long.
I don't know how it's coming. Yeah, it's coming up to the best part of 10
We're still
years.
speaking. We're still speaking.
We are still speaking and like each other broadly. So it's always
enough to have a beer anyway.
Exactly. We should have done this over a beer, definitely. But so let's get into the topic of let's start. We're going to talk about sort of using product management to drive value, but I think we need to sort of unpick value first, because there's a lot of time and energy spent not just in data, in all sorts of projects and programs and initiatives that organizations do about putting in capabilities and improving the way they do things, but value is something that kind of sometimes gets missed, ironically. But what is it? Why is it important to focus on value, and why is it important to get there quickly?
I suppose my perspective on this is that, I've been in technology for quite some time, and in technology, there's always the latest thing coming out. There's always something new that's going to turn a lot of heads, going to be shiny, and people are going to be interested in it. And, it happens, and it's going to continue to happen. And the challenge for me really is, making sure you understand what that thing's going to do and how it's going to help contribute to the business or organization that you're working for. And, I'd rather start with what are the problems and challenges and business needs, whether that's an organization that's got operating challenges, whether it's an organization that's got customer challenges. I'd rather start with what is the problem you're trying to solve before you actually then start to adopt that new technology. And I feel that, over the last 20 years, technology and digital and data has changed massively. It started with here's a great new technology, here's a mobile phone. When I worked at O2 quite a few years back, we worked on the launch of the first BlackBerry, and we had a team then which was how do we exploit this technology so that we can start to drive usage of mobile data and therefore ultimately revenue and cost to the business. And for me, that sort of felt like the wrong way to approach it. We were going out and we were trying to look for the solutions and solutions to problems that didn't necessarily exist at the time. And we were using the sort of the revenue approach to that. We were going after the idea of increasing revenue and increasing usage of the O2 platform. But we weren't thinking about the customer and what the customer needs. And I was thinking about the customer and the value that's going to drive the customer is the most important thing.
Is it just about tech? You sort of articulate that in terms of technology first rather than value first, and that you don't like that, and it should be the other way around. Is it just about technology here? Because there's also the idea of sort of implementing other capabilities, particularly in sort of the data space around, bringing in data scientists and all these sorts of things. Is it mostly about technology here that when we think about what value we want to deliver, that's the problem, or really is this sort of broader across an organization?
I think it's a lot of the businesses start in silos, don't they? And that it's very easy for people within different functions, within the data function, for example, to sit there and think about data and not be in touch with what the business challenges are. And for every function, whether it's data, whether it's digital, whether it's technology, you've got to know what the business strategy is, got to know where the big challenges are, and how you support going to those things. We look at an organization, and without a clear strategy and a clear approach, often organizations, let people get on with just doing the things that they want to do. And, I think historically, again, with a lot of sort of data organizations within business, I've seen they're very, very good at sort of producing reports and robustly churning the data and serving it up. But unless they really understand what their customers and their internal customers or external customers need, and how that contributes to the overall strategy, it's very easy to become sort of almost sort of just another cost center in the business and not adding value. And that's the challenge that most organizations have that don't have a clear strategy and approach going forwards. In my opinion, it's drive from the top, drive with the value, prioritize based around the value, and allocate and align your team to that value. And if you do that, then constantly people will come back and want to use your team and see how it contributes. And it's that thing. It's if you're a cost center in a business, which data often is to start off with, often it sits under the finance area. If you're a cost center in the business, then the CFO is going to sit there and he's going to look at the costs, whether it be platform costs, whether it be people costs, whether it be process costs, and he'll look at that and he'll go, what's the upside for this? What am I getting in return for this? And, the more alignment you have, the more people you have on side, the more value that you're producing, the easier it is for you to then reinvest and then provide a business roadmap that sort of like is delivered by your data strategy and your data plan.
Yeah. No, I think this idea of aligning what you're doing to value is super important. You talk there about sort of top down. The industry's kind of got behind, I think, this idea that start with a business strategy, but it's not always that. That can be quite a sort of potentially a scary thing for teams to think, right, I've got to align to a business strategy. It might not have always been written down that well, not really clearly articulating those sorts of things. Is it mostly about strategic things like, new revenue streams, going into new markets, whatever this business strategy might be or growth strategy? Or is there kind of operational, tactical, day-to-day things that hopefully contribute to what you're trying to achieve as a business where value is also important?
I think there's a number of different buckets of things, I think, is my view. Quite often I've seen in the past, and we get this when we're doing data strategies with Cynozure, we see a lot of operational things. Some of the basics are just not right. There's a load of things that can be done, which is basic reporting analysis to help provide more efficient organizations. So the bucket one for me is definitely about operational efficiencies. Bucket two, which I see a lot of, which is very much about how do we, depending on the organization, I talk generally in the context of consumer organizations with end customers, but generally there's a customer experience. Understand your customer, know your customer, provide them a better customer experience, and that ultimately will contribute to revenue, acquisition, retention, all those sort of usual targets that you have. There's a third bucket, which a lot of companies are sort of on the cusp of, which is I call it sort of a new products and new services, and this is really about in your data world, what data is valuable to you, and how can that be used to create better products and services that are going to increase revenue lines within your business. And so for me, those are the three big buckets of change that data can try and support. From a business perspective. In terms of your question about should these be, big things and should you have a strategy, quite often you're right, there's not always a strategy that's clearly articulated or written down. Some places we land, they're absolutely nailed on. They know what they want to do. They know how they want to do it, and they need you to fill in the gaps and create the plan for that. In other organizations, you have to go away and work out what the big priorities are, and then what are the small priorities. And I suppose in those areas, when you're doing these things and when you've created the priority list, really my preferred approach, going back to some of the things we were talking about earlier, is to try and prove value quickly. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but get some wins under your belt, find the pockets of gold, go after them, get somebody behind you, get somebody championing you, and then get those small incremental wins. Because we've all been on big programs for many, many years, and then at the end of it, that world's moved and world's changed, and by the time the program's delivered, then you're in a place where you have to start again all from scratch. I think we're in a different world now where by picking off small things and incrementing towards an objective, you can get much more traction, much more buy-in. And it also helps with all the change management. This isn't all about technology. This isn't all about process. This is a lot about people. And by taking small baby steps, you can get there faster, more effectively, and hopefully with better value.
Well,
Does that make sense?
It does, and it leads nicely into the sort of bringing this together and aligning it with sort of product management, because we've talked about value, talked a little bit about how you think about value and sort of the approach to delivering it. But where does product management fit in? Why does product management generally, how's that worked? And from a data perspective, how does data product management help to unpick and then deliver that value?
So product management, product management has been around for a very long time. This is not something new. We know this. This is something that started out with sort of industrialization, started out with Henry Ford all the way back. And we've got some great companies doing it really, really well in physical products like Coca-Cola, etc. The Unilevers of the world who've brought products to market for people over the years. I suppose we then went through a period where the big tech companies from the West Coast of the States really adopted it as their mantra. Let's create products for people and let's measure those products. And only those things that are measured and prove success will we then continue to do. And, the likes of Google, Spotify, etc. have really turned this into an art form. And I suppose, again, this has then been adopted by a lot of the big companies in the UK. There's still a few people who are a bit behind the curve on this, but by and large, most people understand that by focusing on a product, a service, a feature, and iterating towards it, prioritizing based on the value that is needed, but always thinking about the end user and the end outcome. People have sort of iterated towards that, and it's made a big difference in terms of the approach to some companies. How does that relate to data? Well, I suppose with data, and again, data's sort of always been perceived as the sort of poor man's relation in any sort of part of a company. And over the last sort of 10 years, I suppose people have woken up to that they're sitting on a pot of gold, which is really, really useful. And those ones that have taken the product approach to this have really thought about it and driven incremental value by engaging with the organization, thinking about the backlog of changes, thinking about the features that they could deliver for their customers, prioritizing them correctly, and then delivering incremental value. And I suppose why is that different to what happened beforehand? Well, beforehand, the approach to data is very much around let's lock it away under keys, make sure it's secure, make sure the data is protected. Let's produce reports that run on time, but they're not thinking about the end user. They weren't thinking about the end user. By thinking about the end user, the business needs, the opportunities, the challenges of the end user, and putting yourself in their shoes. What are their day jobs? What are they trying to achieve? How are they trying to achieve it? Retention, acquisition, customer experience, upsell, cross-sell, average basket value, all these things. Then you can start to create products and services that ultimately meet their needs and drive the business objectives. The most mature organizations we've worked with and I've worked with who really sort of get this and drive sort of products and data products have got to the point where they share common objectives and they share common measures with the business. So rather than having I produced X number of reports and I produced Y number of uptime and the performance was this and it was all sub 10 seconds, the actual focus and the shift was towards having objectives that have been agreed with the business. If the objective of the business is to have a shopping journey that means that people add more to their basket and convert more at the end of the journey, giving the data product manager or the product manager the same objective so that they're going after conversion, so that they're going after retention, so that they're going after average basket value. Those sort of things mean that they're going to start to drive the right behaviors, not just for the product manager, but also for the team underneath them who are delivering that. And be made up of engineers or analysts or dashboards or reports or data scientists. If those people have common objectives with the business, they have targets that are business targets, then they are incentivized by those same things. And ultimately that's going to have a better outcome for the business.
It's great, isn't it? It's sort of orienting everyone around the outcome that you're trying to achieve, rather than there's someone at the end of a long chain of data stuff that's responsible for improving the business, and everyone behind that is purely providing different bits of it to help. Actually, it's sort of pivoting it around to say we're all trying to deliver, as you say, one of the examples, improved customer retention or whatever it might be. And the work that's needed to do that is a bit of data, a bit of reporting, a bit of customer service, a bit of marketing, and whatever those things are. And so it sort of brings everyone focused on that. Is it just for sort of digital consumer focused big organizations, or actually is this an approach that almost any organization, public or private, or is it you need to be a certain type of organization for product management to be successful, and therefore it's for everyone, or is it kind of really for sort of very digital businesses?
That's a good question. I definitely think it's quite a challenge. I think we're very much, because I come from that sort of background and I've grown up with this for many, many years, I can see the benefits for it, and I'm obviously very enthusiastic about more companies adopting it. Companies that sort of start from a different place where, they have a very different culture, there's very much sort of roles and responsibilities are more sort of based in more traditional thinking. I think it's a challenge to go down that journey. It's a real challenge. And I suppose, again, how do you start to sort of change a company and a culture, and pivot them towards that? And it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. I think you can talk about these things. So we can talk about having common objectives. We can talk about having common measures. We can talk about prioritization. And I think a lot of people would nod their heads and go, I just want to do that. That's just good, sensible stuff.
Yeah.
And then if you throw in some of the sort of like the sort of governance principles that sit around product management and agile delivery, and I'm talking about agile delivery of products rather than agile delivery of creating platforms and running, ceremonies and scrums and things like that. But if you're starting to think about, transparency of prioritization, transparency and engagement of your customers and your people who you're creating things for, if you're talking about showing and telling things to them so that they can go, I do like this, or I don't like that, or what about this, or I need to change this feature. And if you have a conversation with them in a way that says that, okay, long term, we want to get to here, what are the top 3 things that are going to get us along that journey, and how quickly can we start to use those so that they generate value for the business? I don't think anybody's ever going to challenge you back and say that these aren't good things to do. They're just good common sense things. I think the challenge is, though, how do you take those good common sense things and implement them into a team in an organization that's is not used to doing it this way? How do you? We work a lot with charities, and I love charities because they're very, very passionate. They're doing the right thing. It's something we really believe strongly at Cynozure that we should support. For these guys, this is, their staff have not been trained in this. Their staff don't understand the behaviors of thinking about their customers. They don't understand to think about, they don't often have a good platform of sort of strategic leadership. And I think this is where it's going to take time. So to answer your question succinctly, I think ultimately it is the right thing for most organizations, because a lot of this is just practical, good common sense. However, you've got to soften your language in some places, and it will take time, and they're going to need a lot of coaching and support along that journey. But ultimately, successful business is always based around making sure there's a complete alignment between what the business is trying to do and the people who are actually building and doing things within the business. And there's the classic sort of quote from JFK when he was visiting Kennedy Space Center in the States, and you've seen this one a million times, and everybody's heard this. He bumped into the guy in the loo, and the guy in the loo, he goes to the guy in the loo, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Why are you here? And the guy who was cleaning the loos was basically said, I'm here to put the man on the moon. I'm here to put the man on the moon. The way I do that is by keeping this toilet super, super clean. And he knows that by keeping that toilet super, super clean, those astronauts are going to be, have a better chance of having good health, not come down with diseases and viruses and things like that. and he knows his part to play. He's incentivized by that, and that's what all businesses need to do, organizations need to do.
I mean, this feels like a cultural sort of mindset thing as much as a set of practical activities to think about product management and put it in place. There's sort of some things, I suppose, environment things that are needed to be successful with product management then, because that doesn't just happen, does it? Your cleaner doesn't automatically align themselves with the outcome of the organization. I mean, getting someone to the moon is quite a big, lofty mission that it's almost quite easy to get behind. But if we're talking about launching new products, launching new services, doing good things for our customer, getting in front of the right people, improving our operations, is there like some things that we need that are like critical for the success of product management?
I'll tell you a small story that from my sort of learnings throughout my sort of career. Back when I was at Marks and Spencer's, we embarked on a journey, and Jason, you remember this as much as I do. We embarked on a journey of changing Marks and Spencer's from a fairly traditional waterfall-based company, and really driving digital through the heart of everything we did, digital and data through the heart of everything we did. One of the products and platforms and programs that I had the fortune enough to lead was we called it BOBS, but it was basically a pick from store program. This is back in the early days when you couldn't pick from store, and a lot of stock was tied up in stores and wasn't surfaced through the website. So now it's absolutely standard to be able to go and order an item and have it picked from store or collect it in store, and it's just part and parcel of every service. But we're in a place where at that time, Agile was new, product was new, incentivization was new. And we were trying to do this in an organization which was traditional retailing, lots of people in store who didn't and weren't open to change. And we were given this incentive, and we were given the air cover. And I think this is probably my first point, really. We were given the air cover to be able to go off and do something different and to challenge people and do things in a different way. And we did that by I suppose when we started off, we said we need you to implement and build a system and a process that enables you to surface store stock that's not selling very well, surface it online so that it's available across the network and can be sold at full price. Ultimately, the big KPI for us was selling stuff at full price, not a markdown. And in retail, most product is sold at markdown. So this was a really great thing. When we didn't have stock in the main distribution center, this enabled us to have more stock that we could sell at full price right across the network. And as you can imagine, this involved lots of stores and store managers who are incentivized to sell good stock and sell it quickly. And if they don't get that sale, they feel that obviously they're not doing their job properly. At the same time, we needed to make sure that those store managers were supplying the right staff and the right processes to enable that. If I was sending an order down to a store, they needed to go off and pick that. So they needed to provide the staff. They needed to make sure that the staff knew where this product was and how to get there efficiently. And you can imagine what happened was that in this situation, there was a million reasons why not to do these things. And by having the air cover, we were able to get the right people together in a room and start to educate them on the art of doing something slightly different. And I remember having a session with a team, and we had people from the network, we had people from the supply chain, we had people from delivery and logistics, we had people from technology. So we had a broad, diverse group of people together, all with a single objective, which I think was really, really important. And we used a coach at the time to try and challenge, the fact that we wouldn't be able to deliver this thing for 3 years. And we needed, so much technology. We needed absolutely perfect. The people in store needed different uniforms. We needed 5 people in store. We needed scanners. We needed all kinds of things. And I suppose, having the sort of coverage to we're going to do this differently is number one. Getting people together in a room and saying, what are we going to do differently? And getting them to think differently by coaching and thinking about product management and incentivization around it. We were able to sort of get them into a mantra of what can we do tomorrow to test this? And it's the testing and learning that was super important here. So by getting them to understand and think about testing and learning, this could be applied in anything. we were able to start doing something very, very simple and low-fi that started to challenge some of these assumptions that the supply chain had, the logistics guys had. And within 1 week, we'd got a proof of concept out there, a prototype out there, which was validating, providing data that we didn't have otherwise, and which was driving us into a different direction. So very quickly, we got data on how long it took for a person to walk around the store and find a particular shirt or a particular dress or something like that. And that challenged the assumption of how many people you actually need in store. So rather than have 5 people in store, all of a sudden we were able to say, well, actually categorically, it takes 3 minutes to find every product. And if we go around in a loop, then actually you only need one person in store to provide the whole service. Great, happy days. Second assumption was, these people in store, they should have a different uniform, because we don't want them stopped as they're going around trying to find the products. We need them to have a different uniform. We also think they'll probably pick up the wrong products and bring them back to get wrapped and packed and sent out at the end of the day. And very quickly we were able to validate that they by picking these products, they found them correctly. They weren't stopped in store, so they didn't need a different sort of identity or a different uniform or anything like that. And we also found that they were picking correctly. They were picking the right items. So we didn't need, all kinds of scanners. We didn't need all kinds of technology to support that. And within a week, we'd got all this data. And by having this data, we were then able to go and demonstrate this data back to the business and show that we knew what we're talking about. And all of a sudden, people were on board with the value, the approach, and all of a sudden, not just having that air coverage starting off. You take that air coverage, you provide data to back up the air coverage, provide that you are doing and trusted in the right way, then you can start to iterate. And I think by doing this and having data, by having a team, by getting people to show the benefits of this way of working, this approach, we were very quickly able to iterate this. And we got this out, this product built, this platform built. We built it in a very, very short period of time, including lots and lots of different people across the organization. And, I suppose ultimately the stores, and the stores were the people that you need, like anything, you need a customer to be involved in this and see that it's going to help them. All of a sudden they were queuing up to be the next people on, because they saw it as a great way of selling stock at full price, which they were incentivized to do, rather than it going out markdown. So everybody was happy. And that for me is my sort of eureka moment in terms of these are the things that you need to be successful with product management. It's about having the coverage, it's about having the data, and it's about taking the people on the journey. And you can do that anywhere if you've got the right people to take you there.
Yeah, it's such a great. I know we've talked about it loads of times, it's great for. Well, no, it's such a great case study for product management, but really importantly, doing things slightly differently and using this idea of testing assumptions, testing and learning what works with the product, and then enhancing the things that work and dropping the things that don't. And I think that relates really nicely to data products, and that's what we're seeing, isn't it? That you were talking about a sort of a service and a way of working on a retailer, but this equally could apply to building a dashboard or building some kind of predictive algorithm where you're testing assumptions, you're testing whether something will work, you're bringing your end customer into the conversation rather than just delivering to them. And I think that's a really powerful way of making sure that you invest all your time on the things that actually work and are actually going to be successful, and not just sort of building something because you think it's going to work and you plow money and time and energy and effort into it just to find later on that actually it was the wrong thing to build in the first place. So it does relate over to kind of what we are calling now data products, which is things like dashboards, things like models, things like algorithms. All of that still rings true, right?
Oh, totally, 100%. And if anything, I think it's more true. Data and data products, and that data products can evolve as you go through a business problem, but it's always about starting with a business problem. In the example I talked about, the business problem was they had too much stock in stores and not enough stock in the distribution center, and therefore with stock misallocation, you've got the opportunity for products to be sold or sit on the shelf. And by going after that business problem, you're building out a product and you're evolving it. In the data world, it's exactly the same thing. We talked about, I suppose a lot of retailers at the moment are going through a situation where they have either done very badly or done very, very well out of COVID. And, a lot of people have gone online, they bought, clothes, they bought paddling pools, they bought all kinds of stuff. And they bought them from places that they hadn't bought them from previously. And so, all of a sudden you've got a situation where you've got massive acquisition of new customers. Now, a lot of retailers are, acquisitions really, really costly. So actually what you want to do is really leverage the ones you've acquired and make sure you retain those customers. And, one of our clients recognized this pretty early on, and we were trying to help them out with this. And the business problem we're going after was retention. How do we get those customers to start to buy more from this client, from this retailer, and how do we get them to have their second, third, fourth purchases? Because once you've got your second or third purchase, then you're into a really good thing. You've got loyalty, and your profit goes up basically. And again, what we did there and what was really important was focusing on what was the challenge. The challenge was retention. How do you start to solve this with data products? We start off with a very simple, tiny, basic product, which is how many customers are going to churn. On a weekly basis, how many customers out of our customer base do you think are not going to shop with us again? Who are at the point of churning? And that's something very basic. That's a simple dashboard. How many customers? Who are they? And what are they going to do? And you create that, and that's a data product that starts to solve that problem. You then get into, okay, well, that data product now, I've got to come up with a model that is a different data product that then goes after what do I need to do to those customers? So what is going to be the action that I need to take with those customers? So first of all, you started with a product, which is a dashboard. Who are they? The second is, what am I going to do to these customers? So that model is then created as a separate data product. Again, you've got to iterate it, you've got to test it, MVP it, and all the rest of it. And then once you've got that, you then need to test it in real time to work out, is that the right model? Is it making a difference? Is it taking the action? And is it keeping customers in the funnel? Is it keeping customers on site? And are they purchasing more? And you can see that data and thinking about data products in that circumstances is not thinking about a report or a dashboard or a model, but it's actually thinking about the business. It's thinking about the business objective and creating multiple products to meet that overall objective. And in that example, the person who was sort of driving that team was very much incentivized around the marketing things of acquisition and retention. They had the common objectives and they knew what they were talking about in terms of going after it. And that's where data can be very, very powerful, and data products can be very, very powerful in supporting business objectives if they're aligned correctly.
Yes, which is obviously the big question and the big challenge often. So I'm just thinking about sort of wrapping up. What pragmatically can people do? Because as you say, a lot of this is about sort of cultural thinking and cultural mindset and new ways of working. But if someone and with the kind of agile mindset of what could we do tomorrow, which is a phrase I love, what could people do tomorrow? What's the pragmatic thing that people can start to do to edge towards this idea of treating data as a product and product management kind of mindset to deliver value more quickly?
Yeah, I think depending on where you are and what your role is in the organization, I think really the first thing I would say is go and talk to the business that you're trying to work with. Make sure you understand what the business is trying to achieve and start to prioritize it. Make sure you're embedded and really understand their challenges. And I suppose if you're a product manager in an organization, go and sit with that person, that part of the business that you're looking after. If it's an operations part of the business, if it's a supply chain part of the business, if it's a customer experience part of the business, sit with them and understand what they need and what you can do to contribute towards that. Understand their KPIs, understand where their problems are around their KPIs, and then start to think about putting that together as a backlog. So I think engagement with the business is really, really important, and understanding the business needs and challenges is probably number one. That's the first thing I would do if I was in an organization. Once you've got that prioritized list, once you've got that list, I think then it's really a case of, okay, if you're going to start to deliver against this list, how do you start to, you've got to pick something that's small enough that you can get some value from, but delivers enough value so that you have a champion, you have someone who's got your back. Credibility is number two, really. So you've done the engagement, that's number one. Credibility is number two. And you get credibility by picking something small, doing it, proving it, and then actually influencing and impacting on their KPIs. So that's number two. Final thing for me would be, once you've done this, don't go out and sort of think this is just you on your own. This is very much a sort of team sport. You've got a team of people around you. You've got people who are going to be engineers. They're going to be dashboard developers, report developers. They've got to buy into this. You've got to be a team. You've got to have collective KPIs as a team. You've got to have the processes as a team, and you've got to be transparent and have their back, and they've got to have yours. And so I think be a team is number three for me. If you're doing those things.
Love it. Well, all very practical things that people can do. So that's always nice. And while you were speaking there, I kind of, and it's for another conversation probably, but the role of the chief data officer in all this, and our chief data officers, and certainly thinking through the ones that are most successful are the ones that think with this product mindset. You can almost, they're product manager for data almost, and the ones that have this kind of mindset of thinking about the end objective in mind and working back to building capabilities rather than the other way around, and I think are the ones that are most successful. So I'm just going to leave that one there rather than talk about it now. I think it's for another podcast. Maybe. Yeah, exactly. So I'll leave that one for now. But yeah, interesting thought, people to ponder. Tim, lovely to talk to you as always. Appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your thoughts and ideas, and practical examples towards the end there about what people can do. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Much appreciated. Hopefully it's useful to some people.
I'm sure it will. For sure. So thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you again sometime soon.
Bye.